Business card holder. Those of you who did not make interesting business cards are all regretting your decision now, I bet. So there were several excellent contenders. Some of you may have had a business card on a lollipop from Muriel Mewissen, which I liked very much. I saw many people enjoying the lollipop earlier. And we had Claire handing out the University of Edinburgh calendar as her business card, which I thought was quite novel, and there's still lots of those left to go on the table if you would like one, by the way. They're 2013 calendars, so get them while they're still there. But the winner, who made lots of these, is not the only one, was Lisa. Is Lisa around? Yes, at the back. With her excellent coffee mug holder, which I can assure you fits beautifully onto Repository Fringe mugs and is ideal. So Lisa, you want to come up? I'll give you your prize very quickly. So thank you very much for everyone who's been networking and doing frictionless networking, as in without cards. That's what I got told people were doing earlier. So there you go. Thank you very much. Well done. I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Martin, who's going to introduce the Pecha Kuchas.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first of two Pecha Kucha sessions. The first and only one for today. There's another one tomorrow at some point. And there's a couple of things to say. First of all, about the format. For those who haven't experienced the Pecha Kucha format before, it's a very rigorous presentation format. And it's a bit like the Scottish weather. If you don't like one slide, hang around for a bit because another one will be coming along very quickly. It's 20 slides of 20 seconds each. Hopefully everyone has set up their presentation so that the slides automatically advance and I don't have to have a stopwatch for every 20 seconds. What we have is we have 5 presentations in this session. And the exciting news is that there's going to be a prize for the best one in this session, and there'll be a prize for the best one in tomorrow's session. Now, we have an hour for this session. We have 5 presentations, each of which should take precisely 6 minutes and 40 seconds. So with a bit of luck, we'll have room at the end of the session, not only for questions and answers, but also for voting for who you think did the best Pecha Kucha in this session, and I'll explain the voting process. When you go outside, either after this session, if there's time, or after the following short session, which is the final session, I think, of the day, you'll find some glamorous assistants outside with some shiny things, little gold coins, and they'll give you one each. And what you do is you put it into the gift bag that corresponds to the presentation that you thought was the glitziest, the best, the most entertaining, whatever criterion you choose to judge the Pecha Kuchas on. Put your coin in that bag. Whoever has the most coins will be awarded a stunning prize at the drinks reception this evening. Is that all clear? It's quite a lot to get through very quickly. I'll let you know at the end of the Pecha Kuchas whether we're going to have time to do it straight after or whether we have to wait till the end of the sessions. Somebody I don't want to keep waiting is our first speaker, which is Tony Mathys from Geo Metadata. Tony has to go straight after his presentation, so if you have any questions for Tony, do them straight after. Don't wait till the end of the session, okay?
Pardon?
Yeah?
I just noticed there's an echo with your mic there and there. Is that happening with speakers too?
It's probably because I speak quite loudly.
Okay.
But I'm sure that the technical wizards at the back will be able to cope with it, and I'm standing a little bit further back and I can do this as well. This isn't amplified, I don't think. No, so it's just this, it's just me shouting. Anyway, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tony, who's going to take you through the Go Geo vision for repositories. And Tony, your time starts now.
Thank you very much. How many librarians are there here? Okay, well that's good. That means I've clinched it, because the reality is this morning, realizing I have to do this presentation, it put me in a festive mood, so I wore my metadata t-shirt. So that's a vote getter, if anything else. Anyway, it's already starting, so I better get, my name's Tony Mathys. I work at Adena as the Geospatial Metadata Coordinator for the GoGeo service, which delivers resources to, oh geez, this is fast, my God. Oh, sorry, to academia, in order to be able to create metadata for the purpose of discovery and data management. But many of you are aware that we've been involved with creating, over the past 30 years, a lot of data have been created. We conducted a spatial data audit 7 years ago and realized that there are 500 data sets out there. So the reality is there's a lot of data out there that needs to be documented in order for sharing. So we've come up with this geospatial data infrastructure, which includes application profile, the guidelines, a metadata editor tool, a geo portal, and the shared geo open data repository. Whew, that was catch up. I can catch up now. UK Academic Geospatial Metadata Application Profile supports the specific needs of UK high HEFE comprises elements from these geographic standards referred to as ISO 19115, UK Gemini, and Aspire. Supports the documentation of data sets and geoservices for discovery and descriptive purposes, and maps to Dublin Core and DDI so we can be more inclusive. Of course, we know how much people like metadata. Ask somebody about creating metadata, and this is generally the reaction I get at my workshops. And we can look at other ways of trying to convince people to create metadata, but mind-reading aliens, extraction devices, and persuasive means just really don't work. So we come up with this GeoDoc metadata editor tool, which is a Java-built online tool and requires UK Federation authentication access, so it grants privacy and security for each one who uses this tool to create metadata in the column and piece of their domain. This is the layout on the home page, as you can see. And this is an example of the format or the template that we use for it. The tab format, we have the what, quality, where, when, who, access, and creator with information. Of course, we have text fields, as most these tools would have, drop-down lists, and automated lists where the user can type in a keyword and then it opens up the list and they can select the keyword there. Other functionality is we have automated validation for users. So that if there's something missing, they can return to that. It highlights it in red, and they can go back and address that to validate. And then there's also the map coordinate tool, because we're working with spatial data. It allows the user to be able to zoom into that area, which represents the study area, capture those coordinates, and enter them into the fields. In addition, we have the list edit directory, which holds the records for editing and deleting and updates, and an export record directory, which enables a user to export records using these different formats in XML and a PDF for a more user-friendly version of that. And then we also have an import function which supports sharing of data, because and this includes Dublin Core, Inspire, and Gemini 2.1. The latter two are EU and UK standards to support inclusiveness. And then we have the publish option as well to publish them publicly in GoGeo portal or privately. There's some that don't want to share it. And the outcome of this over the last 6 years is 49 users affiliated with 49 academic institutions have had logged in 3,130 times and created 2,319 records. To me, that's quite incredible. But the problem is only 230 records have been published, and most of those records have been published on GoGeo private institutional nodes, which we create, which only those affiliated with it, the institution, can access those metadata records. And in discussing and engaging with people, these are a number of cited reasons or barriers, if you will. IPR, trust is the big one, liability fears, privacy and security, residual license data rights, especially for ordnance survey data, concerns over data quality, and all these other issues. So those metadata records that can actually be published openly go on the GoGeo portal. This is a screenshot of advanced search page. We also harvest from all these other catalogs which provide free data, and that gives users access to almost 23,000 metadata records, many of which have data associated with it, because some of these are North American and UN catalogs. And then a user can conduct a search. In this case, this example I provided is a geology search, so they can search across all of these catalogs, all these portals across the internet. And subsequently, God, I can even catch my breath here, thank goodness. Okay, gee, I can take a break. And then, of course, we get these results in the return for the search from that refined search. This is the metadata record. Down below, there's the option of either downloading the data set directly from the GoGeo portal, or there's another link which sends the user to the ShareGeo Open Data Repository, and there they can also download the data. And then segueing to the ShareGeo Open Data Repository, we built it with DSpace to deposit and download spatial data. Again, we have the same situation with the metadata, 216 data sets deposited, but only 30% of those from external contributors and many from the National Library of Scotland. But we're encountering 3,000 downloads a month, 3,000 of these in the last 6 months. In addition, we also we've run 41 metadata workshops at 26 institutions with other representatives. We've had 22 different disciplines there. And we also provide these e-learning modules online to explain metadata and spatial metadata to the user. Then there's also this biannual metadata newsletter, which goes out to 200 academics every year. Then vision, in terms of that, awareness and data management, these problems I mentioned before, this is the issue where, in essence, we have a barrier where nobody's sharing or bringing their metadata and data out to ShareGeo and GoGeo But in essence, we hope to encourage good practice with them using GeoDoc, the workshops, and the institutional nodes to deposit these in the institutional repository. So it's a building an awareness through these workshops and doing it. And we envisage data sharing that once we've alleviated their fears and concerns, they can continue sharing or depositing data there and also depositing data in the shared Geo Open Data Repository and the portal. Then the user can search and bring back lots of records. And as a result, they can take multiple records to create additional, or data sets, sorry, I'm talking data sets, or use multiple data sets for new applications. So that's the time and cost involved. And then out of that, we envisage this reuse and this sort of achieve digital immortality where it's all about preservation and bringing it back for a purpose and reuse again. Jeez.
Okay, so as I said, Tony is the only person who has to leave very quickly after this, so if we have any questions for Tony, we'll take them right now. Yep, and there's one at the back. And I forgot to get an assistant. There you go.
Thanks. You were talking about institutional nodes and how there wasn't that much coming from the institutional nodes into the public space. And so, A, why do you have institutional nodes? And B, why do you think they're using the institutional nodes and not making them public? Is it the institution's decision or is it the academic's decision?
Well, it's a matter of, it's usually set up that it's somebody within a department and anybody who's creating geospatial data. For me, it seems to be more of a step of a process, confidence building, if you will. Because as you saw with the metadata records, over 2,300 records created, but only a fraction of those published. So this is just a way of encouraging data management, if you will, and at some point, hopefully, we can alleviate those fears and concerns so that they do make them open. That last slide is just a bit too much going on, but it's basically bringing down the barrier, building the confidence of the data creators so that they can actually continue to deposit their data on the institutional repository. And then also sharing that or publishing the metadata in GoGeo and putting it on depositing the data on Shared Geo, because that becomes, in essence, it's more specialized, and we've had some discussions about that as far as where to go with repositories. But if it's discipline focused, it means each of the respective disciplines know the needs of their discipline, of their researchers and academics, and that's what we're hoping to do with this. And GoGeo, thanks to JISC funding and support, I've been doing this for 12 years now, and until recently, I don't think there's been another academic geoportal anywhere in the world. So it's a gradual step. It's just a matter of how much time it takes, but it's a step-by-step process to address trust is a big thing, really. Most people these days, academics, they know each other. If they know each other, work on a similar project, they attach it to an email and send that to them. Of course, the GeoDoc, what that does with the export command, it allows them to manage their data, download their metadata record, and attach it to their data set and send it to their colleagues. So we're trying to somehow integrate all of this together and engage with them. It's quite a process. So hopefully.
Another question, Balviar. I'll get fit doing this. Here we go.
It was just a question about geoparsing. I know Edina at one point had a specific tool that did geoparsing. Has there been much uptake of that tool within institutions?
Not as it should be, because you're aware of it. In terms of geoparsing, it's a very valuable middleware tool. But as far as I know, not really
because we
as
had
much as there should be.
Yeah, I mean, we had a small piece of JISC funding, which was geoparsing digitized documents, and I think it was, I can't remember the actual documents, they were historical documents, and but I don't know what happened, in terms of actually pushing that type of facility. As I said,
There's been some efforts, but not as much as there should be. And then Unlock itself, which is in essence a product of the GeoParcel that's built into GoGeo to enable to do place name search. In essence, it's a footprint that defines an area. And a place name is given a geometry, if you will, and that improves the ability for searching. The GeoParcel basically does a search through place names of a document, as an example. Then they create a coordinate footprint out of that, and it's quite a powerful tool to use.
Because you could essentially run that over repositories and start to
Definitely.
geo-index the content as as a course in terms of as part of the process.
I think that came up when there was an automation forum at Leicester a few years ago, and that was about the geoparsing. I think that was mentioned.
Geo crosswalk on top of that in terms of them providing the metadata around it.
Unlock, exactly. I know it's a great middleware product. I love it.
Any final questions for Tony? Remembering that this is the last chance. Last chance saloon.
Last chance. Remember,
No.
metadata.
Brilliant.
When you vote.
Well, let's show our appreciation. Oh, God.
I'm sorry if I may have missed it when you were at one of your hastier points of presentation, but so you've got 2,300 records in there, 230 of them published in some sense, although often privately. So of the 90% roughly that aren't, do you have any sense of, are they complete records, or are some of those people who are just trying it out and never finished?
Well, we don't know, because we have the security privacy claim in there. But the fact that so many people are accessing, we don't know if they're using it for personal data management or not.
Right.
But we really can't say, because
I'm trying to understand what are those other.
Yeah, we'd like to know as
2,000?
well, but we're restricted to accessing ththose. Because take an example, there could be a metadata record in there that somebody created at a descriptive level, provides detailed information, and I find out that it might maybe be involving health informatics or whatever, and I discover out of that record that there might be an area that poses some risk, and I know people that live in that area, or it's an archaeological site, or an environmentally sensitive site where there might be endangered species. Well, I might all of a sudden decide myself if I'm unethical and go there and rob the site or do something.
But
so
it's problematic that because of those conditions that we're constrained, almost everything that's in there, we can't, in a sense, you're prevented from knowing what it is.
No, other than we thought about building a query where it could run through the records and then return to see what kind of information, or not so much, but it just indicate whether or not the field's been filled or not, say with mandatory elements and so forth. So I think that's the next step we'll have to take on it. But it's just, again, there have been so many logins and uses of it, but yeah, that's true. Who knows? Exactly.
All right, let's thank Tony once again. Thanks. Can you take off the... Yep. Our next speaker is Sarah Jones from the Digital Curation Centre. And Sarah is going to get set up by a process of swappage. And Sarah is going to be talking about the DCC's DMP Online data management planning system. And I'll get you started. So just press F5 when you want to start. In the interest of trying to finish somewhere around the scheduled time, we'll take the remainder of the questions at the very end. So after Sarah, we'll go straight into the next presentation, okay?
Okay, thanks very much, Martin. So I'm Sarah Jones from the DCC, and I'm going to talk to you about DMP Online, which is a web-based tool to help researchers write data management plans. And I'm going to mention specifically what's changing about the tool, because we did an evaluation at the end of last year, and we're making a number of changes in light of the findings from that. So first off, just to step back, what's the idea behind this tool? Effectively, at the DCC, we realised that a number of research funders were asking for data management plans in grant applications, and we wanted to help researchers write those plans. So we developed the tool, we launched it at the GIST conference in April 2010, and we've had a new release every year since. And over the years, quite a lot has changed. There's been increasing pressure on researchers. More and more research funders are asking for data management plans, and those requirements are evolving. And also universities are now starting to release policies and ask for data management plans. So we wanted to pull together those requirements and help researchers. So as I mentioned, we did an evaluation last year, and effectively we wanted to check that the tools were still meeting the various use cases that there were, and see whether it was helping researchers to write those plans and what else they potentially needed from the tool. So what I'm going to do through this presentation is just give you the findings from that. So in terms of what people liked about the tool, they particularly liked having an online tool. They thought it was technically very strong, it was well coded. Users really liked the ability to share plans, to collaborate on writing them, and there's a big desire for customizations from universities. So they wanted to feed into our development plans. Inevitably, there were things that people disliked too. Researchers found the process of writing a plan quite long and a little bit overwhelming. They thought there were just too many questions and a bit too much detail. And some of the mappings that we had, the way that we associated requirements with guidance, was causing some confusion. And that's really about how we use the checklist in the tool. So I'll talk through that in a moment. But ultimately, what researchers wanted was the minimum that you could get away with. They wanted a quick, simple process, as much guidance and support, so suggested answers, things that they could copy and paste. And that's what we're trying to add to the tool to enhance version 4 release. So to go back to this idea about mappings and how we use the checklist in the tool, the DCC put together a checklist a few years ago, and effectively that's a list of questions that might come up in a data management plan. And the feedback that we got was that the checklist had just grown too much. It had got too long and detailed. And the way that we were using it in the tool was causing a bit of confusion. So you see here at the top, we have a question from a research funder. And the way that we mapped it, we associated that with questions from the checklist. And these were the questions that we asked researchers. And those questions had the guidance linked to them. So the checklist was effectively the upfront way in the tool of mapping. And there were some issues with that. It meant that sometimes we were asking several questions instead of the one from the funder, and researchers found it a bit too spoon-fed. They didn't want things broken down that way. And also there was sometimes a bit of a mismatch in the questions. We'd either lose a nuance of meaning, or there might be a bit of a different interpretation. And it could mean that the output might be too long to submit. So what we're going to do now, we're asking the questions from funders directly, or questions from universities, and that mapping process has moved to the back of the tool. And instead of using the checklist to perform that function, we have a list of themes. So we say, this question is about storage, and here's a piece of guidance from Edinburgh about storage, and pull it in that way. So it means we're asking fewer questions to keep data management plans short. We're emphasizing the guidance, because that's really what researchers wanted to help them respond. And we're allowing them to delve into that guidance as they need, rather than having them walk through the process the way that we did with the checklist up front in the tool. So I mentioned that we have a new checklist. We've shortened this significantly. It had grown to 100 and odd questions, and we've scaled it back to 13 main questions. It's really focusing on the key themes that need to be addressed in data management plans across the board. Please do take a look at this and give us your feedback. We just released it about a month ago, so any ideas are very welcome. In terms of the technical redevelopment, this is progressing well too. We've developed new use cases and redesigned the database. A lot of the coding has been done, and we're expecting version 4 to be released in this month, towards the end of the month, and then test it initially at a couple of universities for rollout from the autumn. We've also been redesigning the interface. We've been working with some designers here in Edinburgh. And you can see that we're trying again to just scale things back, make it quite clean, quite simple, not much scroll. So it's more just expanding boxes as you need to fill them in. And you see that as we move into the plans too. Here we have the different sections of a plan. Funders might ask for different sections to be filled in, and you just expand it as you want to. And there's also the option for multiple phases. So researchers could have a plan at a grant application stage that they then come back and fill in during the project. And when they go to actually answer a question in the plan, we've got the question up front. If we have a suggested answer from an institution or some text that researchers can copy and paste, that's presented directly beneath. And the guidance comes in a concertina on the right, so people can delve into different levels of guidance as needed. And you have the progress bar as well, so people can see how far through the process they are. So if this has inspired you and you want to join in and use DMP Online, you can register. Anyone can go and use it. We have the code on GitHub, so do download it and have a play around with it. And if you want to collaborate with us, particularly if you want to do a customization for your university, just get in touch. There are 3 main things we imagine unis might want to do. The primary one being providing guidance and suggested answers, because that's really what researchers are looking to universities for. You might want to ask additional questions, and if you have a requirement for plans, if you have a policy asking for them, you might want your own template in DMP Online, and that's something we can put together with you. So that was a quick run through of what's changing with the tool. As I mentioned, version 4 will be out very shortly, but one of my colleagues, Marta, is here. She's one of the developers. So if you want to actually have a look at where we've got so far, please do grab us at the end and have a demo. That's all. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Sarah. As I said, none of the speakers from Sarah onwards have the need to depart very quickly. So at the end, I'll ask them all to come up and we'll do one session, and that will at least keep the back of my shirt sweat-free, hopefully. Anyway, so our next speaker is Dave Tarrant, who's going to be telling us that it's not the size of the button, it's what you do with it. And I'll just get Dave's presentation up while he sets himself up. Oh, I think I might have just closed it. There you go. So just press F5 when you're ready.
I've taken the timer off the first slide. Yep. So I came up with a general idea last week that I thought, well, little buttons make a big difference. And then I thought, well, I can fit anything in that presentation. So now you're going to find out what I've managed to fit in that presentation. But basically, I wanted to talk about access to stuff. We all talk about access, and it ends up being down to this little button that says, that's 20 seconds, that says, okay, download something, okay? But, and we're going through kind of publications and open access and all the rest of it. But this important button enables so much, right? Enables people to fulfill their demands. We heard about this morning, right? Being able to actually access some of the stuff out there might fulfill some sort of demand. So what I want to talk about is some financial stuff. I mean, financial demands is in everyone's book, right? I want to tell you a story about peer-to-peer lending. So peer-to-peer lending is basically cutting out the banks. All right, that's basically what it is. So people can lend to other people directly and use providers to allow them to do things like credit checking. So we did a study and looked at basically 3 sites that enable peer-to-peer lending. These 3 sites cover 92% of the peer-to-peer money that's transferred within the UK. When we did the study, it was 378 million. It's a bit more because these screenshots were taken this morning, so if you add the 3 totals up, they're not that. Okay. So, and what did we find out? Well, if you have a look at the amount received, so this is receiving total, 378 million, you find that it's actually evenly distributed across the country. So the amount of people who want to get money on a loan, right, is evenly distributed all the way across the country. And now I'm going to upset everyone because I'm going to say that this doesn't carry to when you're actually loaning. Now, the people who actually loan money out to the rest of the country happen to be the South. Okay, so it's coming out of London and the South. I thought this might be a bit controversial. Now I'm in Edinburgh, presented this slide, but this is based upon the data. You can go and download the data and you can see this result for yourself. Okay, all of the data is available. But what was the impact of this? Front page of the Financial Times. All right, there's the link there, and also page 3, so it was the hottest news of the day as well, which I thought was brilliant. And so the Financial Times did the estimation, and they reckon this market's going to then be worth 1 billion by 2016. Right? And you can go back in the slides and see. But what else happened? How about improving the economy? So this is a peer-to-peer mortgage lender who reduced their minimum investment, because what we actually found out was that the mean loan was somewhere around the £8,000 mark. So they were working out that they were basically pricing themselves out of this industry because no one wanted that level of money. So they reduced their minimum based upon this research. Based upon one download of one data set. That's what happened. That's a story, end to end. Okay? That was done in a matter of weeks, all of that. So that's what I wanted to say, and it kind of relates to everything. It relates to people, relates to the economy. And I'm very pleased to be partaking in this work, and I've put my own intentional break in the middle of this presentation, because I've also been working, as part of my research, been very privileged to be working with the Open Data Institute, which was set up through the University of Southampton. So it was actually the Open Data Institute who carried out this work as part of the revealing the value of open data. Okay. Obviously, the ODI, we see it as a kind of a unique moment, not just in the UK, but around the world. And, I think the key bit is the open. Doesn't matter what comes after it, the key bit is the open, okay? Actually getting people to invest in open, getting governments interested to actually do more with open, and, setting standards, having charters. This is a map of the countries from this morning who are either directly interested or going to be setting up their own open data initiatives around the world. Okay, so as you can see, it's 9 months so far after the ODI has been open, and there's already a hell of a lot of global interest. Why? Slide, thank you. G8 Charter. So this is the text from the G8 Charter, where as part of the work that we've been doing at the Open Data Institute, our CEO presented all the early work in front of the G8, including open data certificates. And if you haven't seen them, it goes alongside the data management policy stuff. So that was about kind of the global shift towards open. What I want to do in the second half of this kind of short Pecha Kucha is look at the 5 stars. Now we all know, well, most of us will come across 5 stars of linked open data. But what I want to do is kind of challenge that and say, it's not necessarily about technology, right? We can do all the stuff of the 5 stars. It's actually about policy and movement through this. So one of the stars is potentially open data, open access to research, all the raw stuff that's coming out of both the economic sector and the environmental sector and all the rest of it. So one of the stars is how do we enable open data? A second one of the stars in this community, of course, is us, right? The open access movement. We've been good at this for 10, 13, however many years this movement's been going on, right? And this is part of the whole, we must release not just the data, but of course all of the knowledge that goes with it, all of the publications, all of that stuff that tells the story. Okay, and this is my point about linking this back to the initial bit. You've got the data, you've got the story. Okay, this enables, of course, we get to level 3 of this, and we're looking at open science, open knowledge, allowing people to be able to build upon this, make new worldwide collaborations to basically grow the scientific knowledge base. Okay, and I think that's a key aim of science, always has been, right? And we should not stifle that at all. The 4th star, a little bit more complicated. Open innovation. This is the bit where you actually put your stuff under a CC BY SA license, but not under a non-commercial, right? Because as soon as you put it under a non-commercial, none of the commercials can use the stuff to actually improve businesses to benefit the public. Right? So the 5th star then, what we actually need to think about is, well, do we need to go reset and go back to the open by default, right? You reset a router, it comes completely open. We should think about all the restrictions that have been placed upon lots of stuff that's out there and start to rethink the policies. Let's restore the defaults, go back to completely open. Thank you.
Fantastic, thanks very much, Dave. And we can take a little bit of a breather just now because we're coming back up to schedule. And the next of our 5 speakers is Patrick McSweeney.
Could you turn off the lectern mics, please? You can't? No. Oh, can I turn off the lectern mics?
You just have to not shout.
I'll stand over there, it'll be fine.
Right, so just hit F5
Do I
when
need
you're
a-
ready. Oh, yeah, this is it, yeah.
Right. Cool. Okay, so for those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Patrick McSweeney. I'm from the University of Southampton. I do e-prints, open data, web monkeying, and I'm going to talk about my experiences developing a plugin for e-prints to turn it into a data capture repository for the scientific data. And the project is called ReCollect, and it's a plugin you can download from the Bazaar. But the reason I got involved with this is because I am a prize-winning developer of research data repositories. I won a prize at Open Repositories 2012, I think, and I had a repository which basically integrated interacting with data inside the repository to make it into a tool. So Steve Hitchcock from the institution, the University of Southampton, this isn't the University of Southampton, it's an institution, came to me and he said, Patrick, you're a world-leading developer of this stuff. Can you help me with a problem that I've got? A problem which is looming rather large on our radar at the moment. You're all aware. The EPSRC has a very large stick. It is the stick of open data policy mandate, or open access data policy mandating, or some nonsense, where basically you all have to put a plan with what you're going to do with your science data after you've made it. And they want you to have submitted what your plan is a year ago or something, and they want you to have enacted it in a year's time. So he says to me, but don't worry, it's a bit of a quick turnaround, but it's fine, because the University of Essex, the home of the UKDA, UK Data Archive, they've built a repository already. And it gets better than that. They haven't just gone blindly out and thought, oh, I wonder what I could put in a research data repository. They've talked to some researchers about what they want to put in a data repository. And I thought, my word, this is forward thinking. We're going to develop something that people actually want to use. This is splendid. So off I trotted to Colchester campus, the University of Essex, to discover that things were not as I had envisaged. In fact, everything that they were doing sort of was the antithesis of what I believed would work in repositories. They had very, very large lists of metadata, and the workflow went on for pages and pages. And I thought, hang on, this doesn't feel like people have been interacting with users in the way that I was familiar. On top of that, the code at the back end was written by my first day at ePrint's programmer, which is a situation many of us find ourselves in, which meant it wasn't brilliantly maintainable. So there was quite a lot of work to be done, kind of corralling this beast into some kind of plugin that you can all install on your repositories. So I started by kind of stripping back to the bare metal. So I kind of heaved out a load of metadata fields. I thought, we don't need all this, and sort of polished up some of the edges so that it'll install and uninstall gracefully in your ePrints repository. And that was kind of good, and I thought, oh, brilliant. Then there was an attack of politics where people from the University of Essex and people from the University of Southampton sort of said, oh, yeah, Patrick, I see what you've done here, but what we want is exactly what we had before, but with magical one-click install so anybody could use it. And I sort of said, well, hang on, I think if we show this to some researchers, they're going to say, are you sure? So this is a picture of, you see, dataset information. This is Southampton's version. I put the 8 fields that were important for our repository in the dataset information, and then this is in the additional fields. There's about 26 fields in here. They're all optional, and at the top there, the help I put in encourages researchers to ignore it. It was an absolute shambles. It's a bit of a disappointment. It's a piece of work that I've done. The sad and sorry truth is that we launched this in April. So far, our repository has had 8 deposits, of which 5 have files attached to them, so that's a good start. So I should have written all the HTML by hand and saved myself a big packet of development. The thing is that ePrints, ReCollect is a bit like ePrints. ePrints kind of comes with, by default, the kitchen sink of all metadata. And then we expected that what you'd do is you'd look at that and go, oh, we don't need all of this, and throw the bits away that you don't like and just keep what you do like. But not that many people throw very much away. And the same is true of ReCollect. And this results in poor user experience. And you have very confused-looking researchers going, I don't understand the questions, it takes a very long time, and every time someone fills in this form, they generate a tiny amount more, a modicum more animosity towards the library, the repository, and to open access in general. So, yeah, the key problem as I saw it was the thing that I'd won a prize for was all focused on getting as much value from the 3 minutes it takes you to do a deposit as you possibly can. And the value you get out of the ReCollect plugin, if you choose to install it, is every time you fill in an extra field, the HTML page that it generates gets 1 line longer. So that's brilliant. You don't get any services, you don't get any mapping, you don't get any cool stuff. If you wanted a cheap and cheerful solution to this problem to meet the EPSRC mandate, what you could do is use the default dataset type in ePrints, which has some basic information like metadata and a title and an abstract and who the creators are, and that gives you something which will satisfy your EPSRC requirements, folks. That's my hot tip. If you really love metadata, as I know so many researchers do, they just hours and hours they want to spend filling it out, then install the ReCollect plugin. I'm a creator of it, and I think it's a complete bloody waste of time. So the thing you should really do if you're a researcher and you're trying to get value out of the research that you've done and get value out of your research data is go to Figshare and put it in there, because they're doing what you actually wanted. So don't go to your institutional repository, go to Figshare. It makes a lot more sense. They're focused on the user. Not the librarian, the user, the actual person who puts the stuff in, unless that's the librarian. Now, this is a problem I've seen again and again in this community, and it was hurting me to do all this work and know that it wasn't very good. I encourage all of you to read this book. It's called Don't Make Me Think. It's by Steve Krug. I use money that I get from developer challenges here to buy this and give it to people I work with. I am just a tool, right? I am a tool. This is probably apparent to you by now. And if you, as a librarian, come to me and you say, Patrick, I want you to build this machine of death, which people will hate, I'll say, are you sure, Wendy? I'm not sure it's a good idea. I'm really not that certain. And at the end of the day, if you pull rank on me, I still have to build a machine of death. So learn how to not make a machine of death. That's me done. We're looping now.
Fantastic, thanks very much, Patrick. And this brings us to, if you could just put that on, and that clips on. Our last in this section of Pecha Kucha speakers, who is Muriel Mewissen or Mewissen? Mewissen, the third option of two, who's going to be talking about RJ Broker. And after Muriel, we're going to go into a bit of question and answer. So is this you, Muriel? No? Okay, that's fine. So you just hit F5 when you want to start.
Right, that's it. That's my first ever Pecha Kucha, so we'll see how it goes. I'm going to talk about the Repository Junction Broker, which is a middleware tool which we've been developing at EDINA for the last few years. Now, I hope most of you will have heard about a broker before, because I don't plan to actually go into the detail of what it does. But what I can tell you is that it's a delivery system for research output. So it takes in deposit from data publishers such as data providers such as publisher or subject repository, and transfer it to institutional repository. Now, obviously, like any software development project, it's not always been a walk in the park, and we've had our challenges. And so this presentation is really about the challenges that we've had, and one of them is that we've been very liberal into taking in data. So we are happy to take anything, and that has brought all range of things in various shapes and sizes. So obviously, people are more interested in full text, but we're quite happy to take metadata only, to take open access, to take embargo, to set up data feed for little dribble of data, or complete flow of data. We'll take anything. Now, what you have to remember is that for a publisher, their data is very special, so they expect first-class special treatment. And for each data provider, we have to set up a bespoke data feed and that interacts with their system with the broker. And obviously, as soon as you speak about bespoke, you're thinking about resources. So this is time, money, effort, people, and we, unfortunately, we're expecting them to do this voluntary. So we need to fit in with their priority and with their development plan. And sometimes, this takes a little bit of time. Also, the data is precious. Some of it is open, some is not. And therefore, when it's not open, we have to involve lawyer, which tend to complicate things and to slow things down. But we think it's necessary to have the appropriate agreement in place so that we can get a whole range of data, because that's what is going to be useful for us. Because at the moment we are at the stage where repository are quite happy to sign up for the broker if we have a wide range of data that's useful to them, and data publishers are happy to give us data if we have repository already signed up to consume this data. So this is the stage we are at the moment. So in terms of institutional repository, we obviously have ePrints, we've got eSpace, we've got Fedora, but there's a whole range of other systems out there that have been implemented, including homegrown system, which we have to interact with. So, in terms of development, obviously, the more possibility you have, the more work we have for ourselves. Now, within one specific software, we also have various different versions, and if people are quite happy with the latest and greatest, some of them prefer to, hold on to the older technology because they trust it. But then they've got a very different range of functionality, which we also have to take into care. And in order to work with those repositories, we don't always have the people with the right technical skill at the other end, and that can be a challenge in itself. So in terms of working with them, we're using the SORT protocol to get data to the repository. Now, we also find that repository have software have implemented the SORT protocol in different ways. They've picked and choose what they supported. So what we get is not always what we expect, and that creates another challenge. For people who've been in the Repository of the Future workshop yesterday, you know that the landscape is changing, and there's a lot more CRIS involved with the repository. And the way they usually work is that overnight they will wipe everything that's in the repository and replace it with new data, which means that for us, we don't need to work with the repository anymore. We need to work with the CRIS if we want the data that the broker transferred to stick more than 24 hours. Now, we are a UK focused project. Our funding is UK. Most of the people we've worked in the trial phase are based in the UK, but we can't lose the focus that worldwide research is worldwide, and therefore, the broker's focus needs to be worldwide as well. So something that I've already mentioned, that other people have mentioned, is the changing landscape. Things are constantly evolving, and we need to be in pace with them. We can't be reactive. We need to change as things happen. And one thing that we find is that it's a complex project. So talking about it require quite an understanding, and there's a lot of different people involved with different roles, and sometimes getting the information across to the right people in the right way is not always that straightforward, and this has been quite a challenge for us. So our next step is to move towards a service environment. And so what we're striving to is to provide something that's going to be helpful and that's going to be useful, and hopefully, like the Olympic Game, is going to be great, and together we're going to make it great. We're going to get lots of medals, possibly gold, although, the broker is completely agnostic to whatever color of open access you want to support, and we'll work with anybody of any color, whatever open access you support, whatever technology you use, and we'll work with everybody. Now, we know it's going to be a long road, and we know we'll have to constantly work and develop our offering and our tool, and hopefully, in 25 years' time, we'll be building our third broker to cope with the increased demand in traffic, and we're quite happy to do that, and hopefully you'll be there to enjoy it with us, because what we want to do at the end of the day is provide cake to everybody so you can have it, be happy. And that's it. Thanks.
Lovely. Thanks very much to Muriel. So we have 10 minutes before the next session starts. So this is the time that's for you guys to do questions and answers to the four speakers who didn't get a chance to field them. So if Sarah, Patrick and Dave can come up, I'll do my running around bit with the microphone. So questions for any of the four at this stage. You don't have to do it in order.
Who was in the green outfit?
Do we have questions for our speakers? Or are we all exhausted by the pace of delivery? Yes, Robin. All other questions should come from the front row, please.
Question for Sarah. So, as you know, we in the University of Edinburgh have been looking forward to the new tool and the ability to customize it with the suggested answers. How do you expect or want other institutions to engage with you to get that customization going at other institutions?
We will be releasing guidance on that. Kerry, who's also here, has been putting together guidelines to help institutions figure out what kind of guidance to put in and the themes that are generally covered in DMPs. So we've essentially got a spreadsheet to work through with the themes, so you can think about what guidance you have on storage or what guidance you have on metadata or who you can point researchers to, so any support staff that they can go and contact to help write a plan, so that you can give us that various guidance and suggested answers, and then we can put it into a template for you. And what you need depends on your context. So at Edinburgh, you have a policy that asks for data management plans, and the question for Edinburgh is really what you need to ask in addition to the research funders, and if a researcher at Edinburgh is applying to one of the funders that expects plans, like AHRC, do you want to ask anything in addition, or are you happy for that AHRC plan to be what you accept at Edinburgh as well? So we're putting together guidelines to help institutions work through that process, and I'll be emailing you to do Edinburgh as a bit of a trial, hopefully.
Thanks, Sarah. Questions for our other panelists? I think everyone's knackered. Okay, they've voted with their feet. You are to vote with shiny golden coins, which you'll be given on the way out. Now, we've got about 8 minutes. Do it now? The overall chair of the event has spoken. We've got 8 minutes before the next session starts. So what we're going to do is, if you can all file out in an orderly fashion, take one coin and one coin only, place it in one bag and one bag only. If you put it in bag number 1, that means you're voting for Tony, who unfortunately had to leave us a bit earlier. Bag number 2 is for Sarah Jones, bag 3 for Dave Tarrant, bag 4 for Patrick McSweeney, and bag 5 for Muriel. So go do that now and be back in precisely 7 minutes. Thank you.